Part 3. Ayebo, Ayeba. Somebody call the pastor. Sunday dawned with a sky bruised purple, the air thick with the promise of rain. Okrika buzzed with nervous energy as the church filled to bursting. Word had spread. Chike and Pastor Eze planned to confront Nkiru to end her reign of terror. The pews creaked under the weight of the congregation, their faces a mix of fear and defiance. Widows clutched their children, old men muttered prayers, and the choir, diminished by loss, huddled together, their robes patched by Chike's hands. Nkiru arrived last, gliding through the doors like a queen. Her presence silenced the room, her beauty sharper now, almost painful to behold. She wore a white gown that shimmered like fish scales, her hair braided with river reeds. "Let us worship," she said, her voice a velvet blade, and began to sing. The hymn was her strongest yet, a tapestry of sound that wove heaven and hell together, promising salvation, delivering doom. Men rose, trance-like, their feet shuffling toward the door, toward the river. Chike leapt to his feet, his voice cutting through hers. "Mighty is the one who saves me." It was a worship song his mother had sung, simple but fierce, its rhythm rooted in the earth. He clapped his hands, stomping his feet, and the congregation stirred, joining hesitantly at first. Pastor Eze took up the call, his preacher's roar shaking the walls. "Holy is the Lord who reigns." The choir followed, their voices raw but resolute, drums pounding from the back. Nkiru's song clashed with theirs, a battle of sound and spirit. The air thickened, the candles flickering wildly. Her smile twisted into a snarl, and her form began to change. Her gown tore as her legs fused into a serpentine tail, scales erupting across her skin. Her face elongated, her eyes glowing red, her beauty melting into a monstrous visage, half woman, half fish, a nightmare born of the deep. "You can't stop me," she shrieked, her voice splitting into 100 echoes, the lost men's souls screaming with her. The church trembled, dust raining from the rafters. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating Nkiru's thrashing tail as it smashed pews to splinters. Chike's heart pounded, but he sang louder, sweat beading on his brow. The congregation pressed closer, their worship swelling into a tidal wave, drums, claps, shouts of "Amen," weaving a shield of sound. Nkiru lunged, her claws raking the air, but the song held her back, her movements slowing as if bound by invisible chains. Pastor Eze gripped Chike's arm, his eyes blazing. "She's weakening. Keep going." Together, they led the final verse. "The darkness flees, the light prevails." The words rang out, pure and unbreakable, and Nkiru staggered, her tail coiling in agony. Her chorus of souls faltered, their voices peeling away, leaving only her own, a thin, desperate wail. With a roar, she hurled herself toward the door, the river calling her back. But the worship pinned her, the congregation's unity, a force she couldn't break. The ground shook, a crack splitting the floor, and the river surged up, flooding the church in a sudden, violent wave. Nkiru screamed as the water swallowed her, dragging her down, her form dissolving into foam. The flood receded as quickly as it came, leaving the church sodden but standing, the air silent save for the congregation's ragged breaths. Chike sank to his knees, trembling, as Pastor Eze raised his hands. "Praise be," he shouted, and the people erupted, their voices now free, joyous. Chike smiled weakly, explaining to a wide-eyed child beside him, "Worship comes first. It breaks the spirit's hold. Praise follows to seal the victory. That's why we sing it that way." The missing men didn't return, their boats lost to the river's depths. But Okrika was free, the town rebuilt, stronger, and every Sunday they sang worship before praise, a tradition etched in their survival. Years later, fishermen swore they heard a faint voice on moonless nights, Nkiru's, soft and mournful, no longer luring but weeping. The twist? Some claim to see her shadow in the water, not monstrous now, but human again, her hands clasped in prayer. Had she found redemption, or was she plotting her return? Anticipation resolved. Her defeat wasn't death but banishment, her fate left hauntingly unclear. The power of worship triumphed, but the river still whispers her name. Moral lesson: worship is a weapon against darkness. Its power prepares the way for triumph.